There's too many coincidences. He was at the auction that night, and yesterday he offered me a butterscotch.
Not exactly a crime.
Welcome to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Hawkeye Episode 3, Echoes. The episode's title refers to the leader of the tracksuit mafia, Maya Lopez. In the comics, her origin is very similar to what we see in the show. Her father was an assassin who worked for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, who we also saw in the Daredevil Netflix show. Even at a young age, Kingpin realized that Maya had the skill to mimic anyone. She could copy fighting styles or even play musical instruments even though she's deaf. In her school assignment, she writes that she wants to learn how to play capoeira, which is a Brazilian fighting style that combines martial arts and dance. Now, this is a nod to her career as a dancer in the comics, and also she employs this fighting style in the fight later on. Now, her powers are a lot like the Taskmaster, but they're more natural and not programmed like the Taskmaster we see in the MCU. In the comics, after Maya's dad was killed, Kingpin saw to it that Maya would have the best education, and later manipulated her into becoming an assassin and going after Daredevil. And then later on, she turns on Kingpin and becomes a hero called Echo, coming soon to Disney+. And for a time, she even wore the Ronin suit and joined the Avengers. Maya's dad is played by the great Zahn McClarnon, and they have a whole conversation about dragons.
No, maybe they are, but dragons live in a different world.
Now, I thought this was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, we know from Shang-Chi that dragons are real and do exist in another world.
Yeah, I was trying to eat her dragon's soul.
Which would have allowed it to destroy the entire universe.
Yeah.
But it also seems like a random thing for Maya to just ask her dad. Now, it could be a tie-in to the tracksuit mafia guy's love for Imagine Dragons.
I love Imagine Dragons.
But more than likely, it's a reference to the shadow puppets. They show a monster eating a bird, or a dragon eating a hawk, or as we'll later see, Maya the dragon chasing Clint the hawk. Anyone else freak out when we saw Maya training in 2007? In the MCU, that was actually 15 years ago. No, 16 years ago. Crazy.
I know, man. 2020 was just last year, and that's the year I was born.
Shut up. Just like in the comics, Maya's dad is killed and she swears revenge. The bloody handprint on her face is also from her father's murder in the comics and becomes her symbol. Now, there are a few clues about the mystery man at the top. The most obvious is that the tracksuits are operating out of Fat Man Auto Repair, maybe a nod to the Kingpin. And of course, we've already seen the Kingpin in the MCU, kind of. I'm pretty sure the Netflix shows are still in the MCU, and he was brilliantly played by Vincent D'Onofrio.
You embarrassed me. Embarrassed me in front of her.
And that version of the character in the show was famously proud of his cufflinks, and Uncle here wears cufflinks. Kingpin confirmed.
Not the beast! Ah!
Also, in the comics, Kingpin was behind the tracksuit mafia. And like I said, in the comics, he also took a role in Maya's upbringing, just like the mysterious uncle figure in this episode. Whose hand is this? I must know! Tell me your theories down in the comments. But I have a few I'll go into later in the episode.
Hey, person, that's a real good Easter egg.
Well, actually, Doug, from now on, you have to call me Lord Person.
Why? Did you do a favor for a king or something?
Well, actually, no. It's because I purchased a plot of land in Scotland, which, according to historic Scottish custom, grants me the title of Lord or Lady. And I actually acquired this land through established titles, the sponsor of this video. My land is on a private nature reserve in Ardeleigh, Aberdeenshire, and helps preserve their woodlands. And that's the cool thing about this certification. It's not just a novelty gift. It helps protect the woodlands of Scotland. With every order, they plant trees all over the world through their charity partners One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. So you get a certificate, an official crest, and a unique plot number so you can see the exact location of your land. Then you will be allowed to officially change your name to Lord or Lady, and you can have this on your credit cards or plane tickets. It also makes for a terrific last-minute gift. I mean, just look at some of these reactions.
Lord Kenneth Delane Albert.
All right, hey, look at that. You will be calling me Lord! Lord Joel Green. Yes!
So, if you're interested in classing up your title and helping the environment, click the link in the description and enter our discount code for a 10% discount. Back to the Easter eggs.
Back to the Easter eggs.
Kate and Clint are being held in an old KB toy store, which has been defunct since 2009. So these balls in the ball bin are remarkably clean, leading me to believe that the tracksuit mafia guys put them in there for themselves to play in. But I think there's another reason why the filmmakers chose a toy store. Clint is away from his kids. Toy stores are a symbol of childhood, and he became Ronin when his kids were missing from his life. So the abandoned toy store represents Clint's life as Ronin, childless, empty, filled with nothing but criminals. Now I know you're gonna think I'm reading too much into this.
Not the beast!
But think about it. They could have set this sequence anywhere. but they chose an abandoned toy store at Christmas, and they licensed the name KB Toys. Seems pretty deliberate to me, especially since Maya also had a troubled childhood. There are a few other subtle reminders that Clint is away from his family. The ad between him and Kate on the subway says, "We help separated families move forward." And later he rolls over a Santa Claus, the emblem of a child's happy Christmas. So Maya's trying to find Ronan, who she believes is her father's killer. Clint says Ronan is dead and the Black Widow killed him, which is true
from a certain point of view.
When Nat did show up in Japan, she brought Clint back from the edge and gave him hope. She helped him bury the Ronin identity. Later during the fight, we see this sign that reads "Super Toys at Super Prices," another nod to the public's obsession with heroes, as we also saw with the LARPers and Rogers the Musical. Notice during this fight that Clint is very careful to not kill anyone. Every arrow is used to incapacitate or trap his targets. So the whole middle act sequence is modeled after a great issue of the Hawkeye comic, where Kate and Clint outrun the tracksuit Draculas in a 72 Challenger, like the one in this episode. The entire issue is a car chase, and, like this episode, it prominently features trick arrows, Kate and Clint bickering, and ends on a bridge. Now this image of the car from the end credits is even taken directly from the comic, as is the suction cup arrow. And also, in the credits, I loved how the Ronin sword turns into a subway window. It's very cool. The most prominent member of the tracksuits is Kazi, who is a major villain in the Hawkeye comic. I don't want to give too much away, but he's an assassin called the Clown, who, among other things, makes Hawkeye go deaf when he stabs out his eardrums with his own arrows. Also notice the tracksuits operate under a front called Trust-a-Bro Moving Company, a nod to how in the comics and show, these guys always say bro.
Kate Bishop is guy, bro.
Most of the car chase is filmed with one shot from the back seat, almost like a video game. The putty arrow also makes an appearance in the speed chase from the comics. Clint's Play-Doh and gas arrows are both purple, a nod to his original costume in the comics. Now purple is a color normally worn by villains because, in the comics, Clint started off as a thief. We also see the explosive arrow, which we saw for the first time when he attacked the SHIELD helicarrier in the Avengers. And later we also see the acid arrow, which he used here against the Chitauri. The grappling hook arrow was also used in the Avengers. And of course, he and Kate duplicate this move at the end of the chase. Also, and look, I know that I'm reaching with this one, the grappling hooks used in the Christmas tree farm, along with the ending on top of the train, reminded me an awful lot of how Peter stopped the runaway train in Spider-Man 2.
Person, I think you're reaching.
Yeah, I know, I already said I'm reaching, I already know that. And also, they distract the tracksuits with a USB arrow like we saw in Avengers and What If. But the greatest trick arrow is the one designed by PIM Technologies that also features this PIM-Tech logo. And this is the third Ant-Man Easter egg in as many episodes, and it's also a nice nod to their history in the movies.
Buckled in?
Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good, Arrow Guy. Let's go. Let's go.
Now, I was thinking about this arrow and when it could have been made for Clint. I think that Scott put this together for him just before their mission in Endgame, because after Civil War, they were both in jail and spending time with their families. Santos2 Isaias on Twitter pointed out that when PIM particles are red, they shrink, and when they're blue, they grow. I never noticed that before. Now, I appreciated that all through the chase, Clint was worried about the car.
And the Challenger gets totaled anyway.
And also that when this is all over, they both realize that they need to walk the dog.
I should walk the dog. What do you think?
Yes, walk the dog.
Yes, I will. I'm doing this thing first. Afterwards, we once again see an ad for Rogers the Musical here in Williamsburg. Man, that scene where Clint talks to Nathaniel, it was heartbreaking. Jeremy Renner, man, two-time Academy Award nominee. It's also fitting that Kate is working as an interpreter here for him because he can only get back to his family with her help. Afterwards, he's framed in the shaft of light like he's a saint because he's sacrificing his life at home to help others. When they're eating, Kate says,
My dad was fearless, and his whole life was about helping people.
And it never occurred to me that this hero worship she used to have for her dad was transferred to Clint the day that she lost him. This also reminds us that she's similar to Echo. She looked up to her dad and then lost him as well. And there may be another similarity revealed later in the series. See, in the comics, Kate's dad did have ties to organized crime. And there is something shady going on with Kate's mom and Jack Duquesne. Kate draws a comic-accurate costume for Hawkeye so he can point out why that's a silly idea.
My wife would divorce me if I put something like this on.
Santos2 Isaias on Twitter did point out that Hawkeye's head bandage does look like an H. Also, he's the guy with no powers, no invulnerability. The last thing he wants is to be targeted in a fight. The breakfast ends with Kate giving the dog his name from the comics.
Pizza dog.
Then Kate and Clint begin to finally work together, laying the groundwork for linking the murders of Armand and the tracksuit mafia. Clint realizes they must have been after something else that was at the auction.
Do you think that the tracksuits were after anything else at that auction?
And of course, we know that they were actually after this watch. Now, we speculated in our episode 1 Easter egg video about what this watch is. Maybe it contains Stark tech, or it's like Edith and has hidden Avengers weapons. I also dropped the theory that it has some connection to Kang the Conqueror, because it's from lot number 268, and that's the villain the Avengers faced in that issue. Please let me know your theories down in the comments. When Clint says,
Yeah, it's pretty upsetting to think there might be stuff from the Avengers compound floating around out there.
sure did feel like he was setting up some future story. Kate is very likely to help form the Young Avengers. Almost every other member of that team has appeared in the MCU, so maybe their first mission will be to hunt down some artifact stolen from the Avengers compound. In fact, one of the members of the Young Avengers was a teenage Kang who was from the future. Another reason that I think they could be interested in this watch. So they investigate the tracksuits with Bishop Security software. Interesting that Kazi is listed as a client of Bishop Security. It definitely lends to the theory that Kate's mom is involved in organized crime. Now, I'm really digging this conspiracy aspect of the show, and tomorrow we'll have a video out about all the different possibilities for who Uncle could be. Could it be Jack Duquesne, who is the villain, the swordsman in the comics? Is it Kingpin? Well, here's a theory for you. Maybe Clint did not actually kill the tracksuit mafias. In the comics, Kingpin tells Maya that Daredevil murdered her father, so it could be that he arranged for someone else to dress like Ronin to take out this group. Maybe the tracksuits were expanding too fast, or someone in the operation was snitching. In season 3 of Daredevil, the Kingpin even tricked the villain Bullseye into dressing up as Daredevil to assassinate someone. So maybe Kingpin pulled the same trick here. Or maybe this could be another Daredevil villain called Your Mom. And of course, the episode ends with Clint at the mercy of Jack. In the comics, the swordsman actually trained Hawkeye how to shoot arrows when they were both circus performers. So maybe, in this case, he helped train Maya when she was younger.
I'm convinced.
Well, that's all the Easter eggs that we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.